Hey, welcome back, everyone. We're taking a look at something called composite functions, which is functions inside of other functions. So at the top here, okay, I just have a review. This is not composite functions. This is just evaluating. And of course, anytime you see a number inside the brackets, like here up top here, you're looking for f of -3. What that means is anywhere on the right side of your function where all the x's are, you just plug in -3 and you work it out using the order of operations. So if you have a number inside of the bracket, your solution should also be a numerical value. So you just fill in all the x's and work all that out. Okay, so that's going to be important for something that's coming up a little later. And below we have some notation for composite functions, and the expression on the left and the expression on the right are equal to each other. So notice on the left here you have, first of all, you have f of g of x. You have g of x on the inside and f of x on the outside. And that could also be written as like, it looks like fog, but it's actually just f with a tiny O in the middle. But notice how that's different from a filled in dot. Okay, if it's a filled in dot, it would be multiplication. But in this case, we have F with a little round open O and then G. It's not quite an O, all right? It's in the center. It's not below on the line, okay? So it's like, it's a little symbol that also means composite functions, which you haven't learned yet, but we're about to do. And then it could also be written in reverse. It could be g of f of x, and you would write it as g with a little o and an f. Okay, and of course, these could be any letters. Your functions don't necessarily have to be labeled f and g, but those are the most common ones. So let's actually look at an example of this stuff, and you'll understand this a little bit better. You have to be given equations for f or g or any of the other functions. In this case, I have 3 functions, f through h, and they're all expressions of x. They're linear or parabola functions. You could have any type of function there, all right? But you're basically plugging in numbers, and you're always working from the inside out. So if you notice here, the first example says to calculate, evaluate f of g of 3. So the f you're going to leave alone right now, and you're just going to focus on getting the g of 3. And g of 3 means you are going to plug in 3 for x in the g function. So we're going to look at this function right here in the middle, and we're plugging in 3 for x. So basically you have 3 plus 6. So if you have g of x and you have x plus 6, so g of 3 is equal to 3 plus 6, which is equal to 9. So what you would do is you would put a 9 in here in place of g of 3. Now most of these are simple equations that you don't need to show any steps for. Okay, you could just plug in 3 for x and go 3 plus 6 is 9 and get a solution. And now you're working from the outside. Now you're finding f of 9. So you go to your f function, which is the very first one right here. It's equal to 4x. And you're going to plug in 9 for x, and you'll get 4 times 9, which is 36. So essentially, okay, if you have a number in the brackets, then your solution should be a number. So if you want, you can pause this video and try B and C on your own, and then I will come back and correct these. And welcome back. All right, here we are. H of -2. Let's do the inside first. Well, you're plugging in -2 in for x in here, so you're doing -2 all squared, which is positive 4. So h of -2, -2 times -2 is positive 4, and then you work on the outside, g of 4, you put in 4 for x, and you have 4 plus 6, which is 10. And then, of course, you can have functions inside themselves. So h of 2, that's really a 4. Right? I take the h function and I put in 2 for x, 2 squared is 4. Now I'm going to the same h function, but I'm putting in 4 for x instead. 4 squared, or 4 times 4, is 16. So we get numerical solutions for all of those questions. Let's take a look at these ones right here. Okay, so these ones don't have equations on them. Okay, so there's no plugging in for x. So in a way, these are actually simpler because you don't have to do any algebra, but the concept is the same. Okay, you're going to work from the inside out. So we're going to focus on finding f of 5 first. No solving necessary here. We can just look up top and look for f of 5, which happens to be the first one. F of 5 is equivalent to 3. And now we can look for g of 3, which is also stated above. G of 3 is equal to -2, and now we have our solution. So there's a few questions on bottom there on page 507 that I'll get you guys to work on, which are similar questions. The only one that looks a little different is number 2, and here you have it in graph form instead. So you can evaluate by looking at the x values on the graph and determining the y value. I have that question last. You may want to do 3 and 1 first.